religious are positively blinded to reality when it comes to their religious beliefs. Their apologetics are a laundry list of logical fallacies, empty claims, and appeals to emotion. And I know I keep making these videos pointing this out, but it's important to recognize, and more important to hold the mirror of reason up to these religious zealots to see if they are even capable of recognizing what they're doing wrong. And unfortunately, most are not. So let's do it one more time as we ask the only question that actually matters: does God exist?
I don't know if you, the person watching this video, is a Buddhist, a Muslim, a Christian, a Jew, a follower of the Church of Scientology, or a member of the Jedi Order and disciple of the Maestro Yoda.
Or someone normal that thinks you're all a bunch of irrational idiots.
Maybe you're one of those atheists who think religion is a con, and therefore better they don't hit on you with their absurd dogmas and their repressed morals.
Like I said, someone normal who thinks the delusional have serious mental and emotional problems.
Or maybe you're one of those who only believes in what can be seen and proved by science. Or perhaps you're one of those people who are indifferent to religious questions, who try to live their lives without getting bogged down with questions that can't be answered. One of those people that surveys define as agnostic.
Except they wouldn't be agnostic, they'd be apatheistic. But, reality.
However, surely at some time in your life, whether wanting to or not, being alone or with friends, during the day or at night, sober or drunk, at some point you've wondered, does God exist?
I'm sure that, given all those possible situations, most people do ask themselves all kinds of meaningless and ultimately pointless questions. What's north of the North Pole? What happened before time? How many angels can dance on the head of a pin? Stupid stuff.
Everybody believes in something.
Well, yes, but that doesn't make everyone's beliefs equally valid or worthwhile.
Even those who don't believe in God believe that God doesn't exist.
Wrong. I don't believe gods don't exist. I simply don't believe that they do. I have not been convinced by theistic arguments to take their claims seriously. I also don't believe that leprechauns don't exist. I simply don't hold the belief that they do.
The existence of God can't be demonstrated with a scientific method.
And that's a problem. Anything that actually exists can, and indeed must, leave behind some evidence of some kind that can be detected objectively. Gods don't do that. Neither do unicorns. Therefore, no one in their right mind should accept that either of them are real until such evidence can be found.
But his non-existence can't be demonstrated either.
Nor does it have to be. Non-existent things don't leave evidence of their non-existence. But we're talking about reason here. I can't prove Bigfoot doesn't exist. That doesn't mean that believing in Bigfoot is a good idea. Rational people should only hold belief in things that are actually supported by objective evidence.
Because God can't be put into a test tube. Neither to say that he is there, nor to say that he isn't there.
Then why should anyone with half a clue believe in him? And I suspect this is something we'll have to come back to again and again.
So, doesn't it seem strange that such a prestigious and competent scientist like Stephen Hawking categorically states, and without having empirically proven it, that God doesn't exist?
Except Hawking never said that, and I can find no quotes in context to show that he did. So I guess honesty is not high on this video maker's list of priorities. At best, when asked if the universe needed a creator, Hawking said no. He makes it very clear that in his personal opinion, no gods exist, but everyone is free to believe whatever they want.
Richard Dawkins shares the same opinion.
In fact, on Dawkins' own scale, he's only a 6, meaning he allows the possibility, extreme though it may be, that some gods may exist somewhere.
But there are many scientists that see no contradiction whatsoever between their scientific research and their belief in God.
Not so much, considering the hard sciences are probably the least religious field out there. 93% of the members of the National Academy of Sciences are atheists.
Do you know who proposed the Big Bang Theory? A Belgian priest called Georges Lemaitre. At the foundations of modern genetics, we have Gregor Mendel, the one who did pea plant experiments, who was an Augustinian monk. The same can be said about the director of the Human Genome Project, Francis Collins, who declared himself to be a scientist and a believer.
None of which really means a damn thing. While Mendel did work out some of the ideas behind genetics, he also rejected evolution because he couldn't accept that God operated through blind chance. Therefore, he was simply wrong. And Francis Collins? He became a believer when he walked into the woods and saw a waterfall frozen in 3 parts. So, clearly, when it comes to religion at least, Collins isn't firing on all rational cylinders. But of course, all this is just trying to pull something that I've long noted in theists. The idea that just because someone who believed in God did something rational, that makes belief in God rational, which is complete nonsense.
And the same can be said about many other prestigious scientists who, carrying out their scientific work, think that science doesn't distance you from God. These scientific believers know that science, although it can bring us closer to God, can't definitively demonstrate the existence or non-existence of God. Can you imagine a scientist looking for God with his or her microscope?
And the question is, why not? It's part of the cognitive dissonance of religion. The idea that some part of reality gets to be walled off from critical evaluation because it's more emotionally comforting to want it to exist than to actually expect it to be demonstrated to exist.
There are realities that are beyond our knowledge and that we can't perceive with any of our 5 senses, and therefore they have to be treated in line with their nature.
But how do you know that they exist without any actual evidence, any mathematical modeling, any logical reasoning that suggests that they exist in the first place? Why would anyone with half a brain think that they do? And that's a serious question that theists simply do not want to acknowledge.
Think about the reality of love.
Love is a biological function. It exists solely in your brain, and we can quantify it and test for it using modern medical technology.
Can you imagine a boy taking an X-ray of his girlfriend to find out whether she really loves him or not?
Not an X-ray, but you can certainly do it with an MRI.
It's impossible.
Not only not impossible, but very easy.
Maybe you've wondered whether that's the way it is now, or whether one day science will be able to answer all the questions.
Whether science can ever answer all of the questions or not is not a license to just make things up because it makes you feel good.
And the question is logical, because human knowledge has never stopped advancing. In fact, maybe in the future, we will discover if there's alien life or a cure for cancer.
Maybe we will. Heck, maybe we'll even discover evidence for a god. But until we actually do discover these things, only a complete idiot believes they're actually true.
However, what we won't be able to do, under any circumstances, is scientifically prove the existence or non-existence of God.
Because you say so. But that's really the downfall of your position. The only reason that science cannot demonstrate the existence of God is because theists have invented God and arbitrarily assigned this imaginary entity characteristics, including that it can never be proven. This is just made-up nonsense.
Because science researches things that can be handled with measuring equipment. And God, if he exists, will never be an empirical object.
How do you know that? Exactly how did you come to that conclusion? How did you test your beliefs objectively? Those are questions that theists have no answers for because in reality, they just made the whole thing up.
Christianity is never against science. What's more, it encourages you to take an interest in it.
Not for the vast majority of human history it hasn't been. In fact, there are huge swaths of modern Christianity that are not only against science, but they're actively anti-intellectual. They don't want you to ask questions. They don't want you to care about facts. They just want you to blindly believe.
It motivates you to continue exploring all the dimensions of reality beyond the stars and the universe's final frontier. And you know why? Because a little science distances you from God, but a lot of science truly brings you closer to him.
And that's why the majority of hard scientists are atheists. Gotcha!
And hasn't the church always encouraged scientific research?
You really don't know a damn thing about religious history, do you? In fact, the church has historically declared that anyone who discovered anything that didn't fit into church dogma are heretics. The Catholic Church murdered scientists like Giordano Bruno, among others, for holding heretical scientific beliefs, and held people like Galileo imprisoned because they said things that the church didn't like, but were ultimately true.
Well, in the case of Galileo, for example, it was clearly wrong.
In fact, they've been wrong in every single instance where they've gone up against science. The church has been wrong 100% of the time.
It really put its foot in that one. Something for which Pope John Paul II publicly asked forgiveness.
Well, sure, 350 years later, and I'm sure Galileo feels vindicated. Oh, wait.
But there have been many institutions and believers that have driven research. The astronomic observatory that's been operating more centuries than any other is the Vatican's, to give an example.
And funny, they're not really coming up with anything that disagrees with the Vatican's teachings, are they? You know, they couldn't be biased or anything.
Christians believe that science can bring us closer to God, even though it can never empirically demonstrate his existence.
And there you go again, making claims for which you have no logical, objective, or reasonable way of demonstrating that it's true.
Is that the only way to know God?
You clearly can't ever know God because you can't ever have any intellectual reason to think God exists. You can take any nonsensical, made-up entity and replace God with that entity, and it makes every bit as much sense. Science can never prove or disprove the Easter Bunny. It's just idiotic.
No. In your very essence, in the other in need, and in the universe, there are many paths that can be taken to discover God.
No, not that you can demonstrate. Oh, sure, you can claim you can get to God, but you can't show that you actually did anything. And that's the point. I mean, I can say, I reached Bobo the Tree God by standing on my head and chanting Ooga Booga. But that's just ridiculous.
For the time being, turn off the smartphone, the tablet, or the computer, and dare yourself to look inwards.
Noodling your navel doesn't demonstrably do anything. I mean, sure, you can think about things, but thinking about things doesn't make the things you think about demonstrably real. People come up with all kinds of really bizarre ideas, and that doesn't make any of those ideas actually so. But of course, religion isn't about believing in things that are true. It's about believing in things that feel good, whether they're true or not.
In silence, think for a minute about the possibility of God's existence.
The possibility and the actuality are not the same thing. It doesn't help to believe something is possible if it isn't actually real.
Do you dare to search?
Absolutely. Give me something demonstrably real to search for. What you're really asking is if people dare to dream. But dreams aren't real. They're imaginary, just like your God. I thought this video was the perfect vehicle for shining a light on the inherent irrationality of the religious mind. It's all empty claims, absurd misconceptions, and downright falsehoods filtered through the strainer of religious thought. Nothing in this video makes the slightest bit of sense, yet these are the same ideas we see time and time again coming from theists because they have nothing better to say. This is just a way to rationalize their way around the ridiculous things they believe emotionally. And when you point it out, they scream and cry that you're being mean to them. No, they're just being stupid. And pointing out their stupidity is not some vast conspiracy to wipe them out. It's an attempt to get them to think. But when it comes to religion, I don't know that they're capable. And that's sad.